This is the first webinar in 2018 for NEMO. Very happy you are here. And NEMO has started those capacity building schemes, say, of webinars in 2014. So we're looking back at almost 4 years of offering trainings for museum professionals already. For those who haven't heard of NEMO yet, we are a network of museum umbrella organizations and museums in Europe. With 90 members from 40 countries. We represent the European museums mostly towards EU policymakers and society at large. Our core, say, 4 activities that we do as a network are sharing knowledge, good practices, information, cooperation, enabling cooperation between museums and cross borders. We do a lot of advocacy work for museums, mostly towards EU institutions, and the training of museum professionals in Europe. And these webinars that you are now attending is one part of our training scheme. Today, and with this webinar, we are going to listen to a presentation facilitated by my wonderful colleague Margherita Sani from the Institute of Cultural Heritage in Emilia-Romagna in Italy. And she's also a long-standing board member of NEMO. So the NL factor, that's the name of our presentation, refers to the great quality of museum work in Dutch museums, especially with regard to their work with children and young audiences. So we'll be looking at successful measures and elements for great and innovative museums in the Netherlands, and we'll have a look at what can be transferred to your environments and to your museums. But for now, I would leave the floor to Margherita if she's online. I hope she is. And she can go forward with the presentation.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. Of the Region Emilia-Romagna. I'm also a board member of NEMO. And I have been since 2014 on the jury of the Children in Museums Award. Here we go, with the second slide. In this capacity, I was, over the years, I was very impressed by the quantity and quality of the Dutch candidates. So I thought to myself, is there a reason why there are so many good experiences and good practices in Dutch museums when it comes to children and young people? And so I started on a journey, which was also a physical journey last summer for 2 weeks in the Netherlands, to explore the world of museums, and especially to visit some of these 22 candidates to the Children Award, to find out whether there is something behind these good achievements, which can be labeled, as I did label it, as the NN factor. The Children in Museums Award was established in 2011 and is an award which acknowledges the creative use of exhibitions and programs, innovative approaches, aesthetic qualities, and an open-ended learning approach to children learning. You will see, and you can go back to these yourselves, these are the criteria for taking part in the award: creativity, innovation, but well-researched content, and the involvement of children in the conception of the museum, the activities, and the programs. These are the 2 promoters of the Children in Museums Award, the European Museum Academy and Hands-On International. Now, our NL factor, what is it? I came to think that the NL factor is made up of different components, one of which is our good practices, good examples, good case studies, and today we will concentrate on these. Then at the end of my conversation, I will go back to the other factors, which are also very important. But also because I think that I raised some expectations with the few lines that I made available to present this webinar, that you were ready to hear about good practices. So we will we will focus on the candidates, on the 22 candidates of the Children Museums Award. I would like to mention one outcome of a research which was conducted between 2009 and 2011 by the Netherlands Museum Association to find out what really appeals to children. What should a museum stage put up to be attractive to children? And it turned out that a museum simply has to be good, creative, innovative, and has to have a varied program of activities for children. So, when looking at the candidates of the Children in Museums Award between 2012 and 2017, we are looking at these good practices, at this creativity and innovation. And I already apologize to some of these candidates because I really wanted to at least mention them all, that I will not have the time to dwell on them very long. But on some of them, we will focus also to underline some of these aspects. Because I showed MIFI, the sculpture of MIFI, which is the sculpture given to the winner every year, I would like to mention one of these 22 candidates, the MIFI Museum in Utrecht. And as you can see, this is the only Dutch museum devoted to small children 2 to 6 years, so preschool children. And it is really a world, the world of your favorite character that you enter into, the world of the character of Big Bruna. I tried, for the sake of clarity, but it was not easy to group the museums I'm going to introduce this afternoon according to their main characteristics. Now, this is an impossible task because, of course, these characteristics are overlapping. All of them are engaging, interactive, although in different ways and so on. But nevertheless, forgive me for doing this a bit of an artificial solution. Let's start with what was probably, still is, the forefather and the forerunner of all educational museums in the Netherlands. This is Museon, which opened in 1904, and it opened on the initiative of a very progressive group of educators, of teachers actually, who thought that real learning happens when children are confronted with things, with real things, not only with theories, with facts and figures, but with the tangible object. And so they started putting together objects and collections. And in fact, the museum is still referred to today as the school museum. This was a museum for schools and children and school teachers went and visited it. In 1918, it also opened a cinema in the basement, with the understanding that it is much more effective to see a movie than to maybe listen to a teacher. So they put together different disciplines, and still today it is an interactive and multidisciplinary museum which covers geology, biology, history, and so on. And it's really a very special museum. This is also an interactive museum, an open-air museum showing different periods of Dutch history. It's a museum for families, as most of these museums are. The museums I interviewed told me that they are for children, school children, and families. So families are a very important target group. The Children's Books Museum in The Hague promotes reading and tries to encourage children to approach books, but also makes them enter into books, so they experience books, and they are invited also to write stories. Vida Zebra in Rotterdam is a contemporary art museum which also tries to commit young children to art through laboratories. And the National Maritime is an important maritime museum in Amsterdam, which is hosted in what was once the arsenal in the end of the 17th century, and Amsterdam was the most important port of the world at the time. As you can see, they have traditional exhibits with objects, and also interactive displays and exhibits for young children, also immersive environments for everyone. This museum in Nijmegen, which is located on a former Roman encampment, when the city of Nijmegen was the most important Roman city at the time. They participated in the award with with an exhibition in 2012, High-Tech Romance, which was a mixture of a digital interactive exhibition and also hands-on. And in this museum, they use real objects, authentic objects, very much. And this is again something which came up very often in my conversations, that these children museums are not children museums in the American sense, so to say, that they are totally void or far away from collections, but they offer to their visitors either real objects or replicas, but in any case inspired by the museum collections. In this case, it was a combination of physical interaction, hands-on, digital, real, and so on. I grouped another number of museums under nature, science and technology, starting from the Natuurmuseum in Brabant. And you can see the most recent of their exhibitions on the left, which is called BOSS. And it's a very delicate exhibition for small children. It changes the exhibition 4 times a year, so according to the seasons, you have a virtual tree, and children can play some games around it with the parents and grandparents. It's also meant for preschool children, and they get virtual objects to add to the tree, so they add elements to the tree, animals, leaves, and so on. And the other picture shows what is a mixture of, it's called OO Zone. It's a mixture of a depot, of a lab, of an interactive exhibition. You have like 2,000 objects that that children can actually explore and discover in the exhibition. They also have a chip, and they can follow a character. Can be a musician or an artist or a scientist, in order to learn about nature and science from a different perspective. Children's Museum and Science Center in Delft, connected to the technical university in that city, and Naturalis, which is one of the top 5 biodiversity centers in the world. So it's a museum which combines very rigorous scientific discipline and taking part in scientific research, with an offer addressed to families, and with the objective not so much to offer answers, but to stimulate visitors, children, families, to pose questions. So their objective is that of stimulating the mindset of a scientist. So skills such as inquisitiveness, curiosity, creativity. This is the objective of this museum. And this museum also, which is an industrial museum representing the mining industry of the area, which also turned more recently into a museum focused on science, into a discovery center, as they call themselves, science focused on science and technology. And this you will all recognize, it's NEMO, which is the science center in this very iconic building by Renzo Piano in Amsterdam. The museum is one of the most important science centers in Europe, and you have lots of interactive exhibits. But what I would like to bring to your attention today is the research and development unit that they set up in 2014. This is in collaboration with the University of Amsterdam, and the objective is that of finding out how people learn science. So it's science learning, acquisition of knowledge, and it is a win-win situation where the University of Amsterdam provides theories and puts them to the test in the museum, where visitors are also invited and engaged in these experiments. As an outcome of this, they created this mapping, this taxonomy, they call it, of visitor experiences. It means that a visitor, you see, you have the visitor at the center, and the visitor can have many different expectations, many different objectives in a museum context. So this, the museum NEMO, in fact, acts as a learning organization, learning from this research and development unit, and trying to put this into practice in the exhibition. So their most recent exhibition is inspired by this taxonomy, and they try to match each exhibition to a specific learning need or expectation. This might remind some of you of the very extensive work that the Dutch museums did some years ago, inspired by the learning theory of Kolb, which identifies 4 main learning styles. And as a consequence, many Dutch museums at the time tried to develop exhibitions that would be able to cater to different learners, because we all are different. The experience. Now, the experience was a recurrent term in my research. This Sound and Vision Institute, the museum attached to it, when it opened in 2006, it called itself an experience. It's not a museum, but an experience. You should consider that this is the organization, this institution, which conserves the audiovisual heritage of the country. They also have a museum, which is very interactive, as you can see. And you enter with a chip. You're given a ring with a chip, and you activate the exhibits in that way. You're also accompanied by a character. They focus very much on media, and also recently on multimedia. And as you can see, they opened some years ago. They opened and closed. It was a temporary exhibition on YouTube, which was a very dynamic exhibition, which changed its content every month, because the content was also created by the visitors. The idea of co-creation, working with the audience, and so on is something which is recurrent, and we will go back to it towards the end of this conversation. The next exhibition is going to be on news and journalism, because they say they want to promote a critical approach to media and to the news. And we know this in an age of fake news. So they want to promote, as they say, media wisdom. This was a winner of the award in 2016, Georg Ford. As you see, it's in a very special location. It is on what was the waterline in the Netherlands. It's still called the waterline in the Netherlands, an area running north to south of the country, which would be inundated, flooded in case of invasions from the east. Along the waterline, they put some forts on the strategic parts of the waterline, and some of these forts recently were turned into museums. This is one of them, Georg Ford, which aims to promote, aims actually to make subjects which are rather dry and not very interesting. We're talking about Georg Ford, and which tries to make dry subjects such as cartography, geography interesting for children, and tries to make them into spatial thinkers. All the games, both of some of which are interactive, digital, and some of which are physical. So the museum is both inside and outside. Engages visitors in orientation games, navigation games, and so on. And it was, as I said, a winner a couple of years ago. The Maritime Museum in Rotterdam, you see it on the left-hand side, on the back-hand side of this picture, but also part of the vessels on water belong to the museum. Is a museum which has lots of maritime objects and collections. It also, already more than 20 years ago, developed an area for very small children, so Professor Plons, which is Professor Splash in English. And I don't have the time today to show you this video, which, however, you will find on the presentation when you go back to the webinar offline in the near future. You can look at this yourself. What I would like to introduce to you with a video is another experience, which is the offshore experience. And I will now try to open it.
Dit is niet een tentoonstelling zozeer, dit is een experience. Dus vandaar ook de kleding die erbij hoort. En je gaat naar zee, naar een platform. Ja, safety first, dus helm op, hesje. Even de helm goed doen.
Welkom op een platform op zee. Een veelal onbekende, maar niet onbelangrijke wereld.
Nee, de gemiddelde Nederlander weet sowieso al weinig waar de energie vanuit zijn stopcontact vandaan komt. Maar 30% van alle energie die wij in Nederland gebruiken, komt uit zee of van de zee. Dat heet dus de offshore-industrie, die vindt en zoekt naar energie en wint olie, gas en wind op dit moment.
En de bezoekers van het maritiem moeten aan de slag.
Je moet een container op een schip laten landen, 3 containers op een schip neerzetten, zoveel mogelijk en zoveel mogelijk.
Wat is geestig, voor de volle ervaring gaan.
En had jij van tevoren enig idee hoe het leven op een platform eraan toe gaat?
Notie van, maar nooit niet gedaan natuurlijk. Hè.
Deze experience neemt je ook mee diep onder water.
En het is donker zometeen, hè? Want op de zeebodem is het echt donker, dus kijk uit waar je beweegt. En je wil niet weten wat er allemaal op de zeebodem gebouwd is om olie- en gasproductie ook mogelijk te maken. En dat is het high-tech karakter van die offshore-industrie. En dat is ook wat we hier zien. Er worden leidingen gelegd, daar moeten stenen overheen gestort worden, anders gaan die leidingen drijven.
De offshore-industrie is nu nog veel oliewinning. Maar dat is aan het veranderen.
Je hebt daar hele gekke aparte schepen voor nodig, die laten je zien, die staan op pootjes. En dan moet je grote pijpen neerzetten op de bodem, dan moet je ook heien. En stel je eens voor dat je met een heimachine op een bewegend schip zit, dat gaat natuurlijk helemaal niet. Nou, daar hebben ze allemaal oplossingen voor gevonden. Het is echt high-tech.
De complexe wereld op zee is niet alleen een ontdekking, het is ook een test.
Ik heb bijna een natte ruggen van gekregen.
Er gaat er een wereld voor u open, een onbekende wereld.
Een onbekende wereld, echt mechanische mogelijkheden en echt wetenschappelijk ook. Dus het is een hele leuke ervaring om mee te maken.
You can do lots of things, so it's very, very engaging. Stories and storytelling is, of course, a recurrent theme. This is a small museum in the southern part of the Netherlands, with lots of water, islands, very difficult for children to reach the museum. So the museum developed an outreach program, which means there is a handing collection of 16 objects, which is taken out to schools, and schools keep the objects for 3 to 4 weeks and develop stories around them, study them, and so on. The Rotterdam Museum 4045, focused on Second World War, is a museum which is also focused on stories. So each object is telling a story, and young people are invited to produce a mini documentary. They get an iPad which unlocks textual and visual information, and with this information they produce a story themselves. This is a special case because it's not a museum, it's an archive. An archive which, however, in 2001 already produced an educational policy, which is quite rare for archives. It was indeed, it took part in the award and was commended in 2013. What they did, they hold documents of these protagonists of Dutch history, Sigismund van Huygen, who was a counselor and chamberlain of William V. The story is around the lost seal of William V, and the archive developed in the basement the setting for this story to develop and to involve young people who are actually on the search for this lost seal, and while trying to solve the mystery, they carry out real tasks of archivists. So this is very important because, again, it is a combination of physical, of digital. There's a serious game, a computer-based game, but also, in order to solve the mystery, children have to catalog documents. They have to check the temperature of the rooms where these documents are kept. So they're actually putting themselves in the shoes of the archivists. And as they say, this is much more important than telling you what an archive is and how an archive works. It's just much more important that you experience it. The Dutch Resistance Museum, Junior, which is part of the Dutch Resistance Museum in Amsterdam, created 4 different areas where children could put themselves in the shoes of young people their age who lived at the time of the Nazi occupation. So you have a Nazi girl, you have a young guy whose family was part of the resistance, and so on, 4 of them. These characters are fictional, but the stories are real, and so are the objects that you find in these 4 houses. And the Jewish Museum Junior, which is within the Jewish Historical Museum, and it's located in a former synagogue, and as we know, the word synagogue means a place of gathering. And so they recreated on 3 floors a house where a Jewish family lives, and the children can experience the different activities. They get to know the family, they cook, they play music, and they enter into a dialogue, because the objective of the museum is that, starting from Jewish values, to get children to talk about other values, other cultures. And therefore, they also developed a method which is called I Ask, with which they train the museum guides to not only to be able to tell good stories, but to listen and to encourage dialogue and questioning. This is a winner. This is the winner 2012, not only the winner of the Children Museums Award, but also the oldest children museum in the Netherlands, and possibly the oldest also in Europe, which was opened in 1975. This is a special museum which every 2.5 years goes to another country, researches this country, and brings back objects, people, stories, in order to recreate in the museum that country. I forgot, or I didn't mention, that this museum is located within the Tropen Museum, which is a museum on world culture. So their objective is that of making familiar to the young children what is not familiar to them, so what life is of a different culture. And it is a journey, because it starts on a plane, or on a train, or on a bus, and you enter this space, which is only 450 square meters, which is actually where this country actually comes to life, and it is recreated, its buildings, the squares, and then there are these people who are mediators, and as the museum likes to underline, interactivity is not only digital interactivity, but the most important interactivity you have with people. So this is their interactive approach. You have these people who belong to the culture which is portrayed, who engage with children in activities, who tell stories, and so they're also a very important component of the experience. And I would like to also show you the current experience, which is about Morocco. Lots of activities and interactions, dressing up, asking questions, smelling, the cooking, the dancing, being told stories and contributing to the stories. It is really an amazing experience for children. The museum also, for each exhibition, we also create a book for children in school. Every school child that goes and visits the exhibition is given the book before in the school, so a lot of preparation is done also in the exhibitions. And so it is a very special for children. So another remarkable example for me are the Wonderkammers in the Municipal Museum of The Hague. They are in architecture by the famous architect Verlaage, 1935. So the building itself is amazing. It is an art, decorative art, architecture, fashion, and museum. What they decided to do in 2005 already was to develop a space, especially for teenagers. So they did the Wonderkammers, which, as you see from the map, is organized as a board game. You have an area in the center, which is the military museum, and then you have 13 rooms that you go through and play different games. Now, it is so interactive that it's difficult to explain it with words. So I also chose a video here, and then works perfect.
The Wonderkammers was a project with big ambitions. The goal was to engage children, teenagers and families with the art collection of the Gemeente Museum in The Hague in a completely new way. Technology was used as a bridge to create a game centered around art.
Kan jij Wonderkamers aan?
The resulting experience is a whirlwind tour through the world of art, architecture, haute couture, and the decorative arts. The visitor is given a task when they enter the exhibition. They must become a curator within 2 hours. The skills they need, they will gather along the way on their journey through the Wonderkammers. To start with, each pair of visitors is given a tablet, their Wonder Guide, which steers them through the exhibition space and unlocks interactive games in each room. They find their way using augmented reality wayfinding. Scanning codes on the floor through their Wonder Guide causes arrows to magically appear and point them in the direction of their next task. The adventure covers broad ground and is educational but without being stuffy. Every room expresses a key message and brings it to life in a way that engages the visitor and makes them want to learn more. Visitors can dance with Mondrian to discover how the Boogie Woogie's rhythm influenced his paintings. They strut their stuff in haute couture dresses and hear about how clothing is used to emphasize the body's silhouette. In a workshop crammed with real and fantasy tools, they can identify those that are used by artists to work with different kinds of materials. During this crash course, visitors earn points, which they can use to gather an art collection in the depot. Finally, they choose a gallery to decorate in the mini-museum, which is a sculptural cluster of tiny rooms containing real miniature artworks. They can choose the decor and hang up the artworks they've earned, just in time for the spectacular opening. The result is a unique exhibition. The Wonderkammers is an immersive, digital, physical game in which the visitor plays the lead role. Its complexity meant that a team of specialists needed to work together from the design phase onwards in order to ensure it became a coherent whole. The lighting, the videos, the physical location of the visitor, the timing, what's happening on the tablet, and what's happening in the room all had to work together seamlessly. Each room is a little bit different, so every room needed its own particular approach to visitor interaction. But they have to make sense within the overall game as a whole, and offer enough consistency that the visitor can find their way and know what to do. During the design phase, it was necessary to keep a very sharp overview of all the different exhibits. We needed to test rigorously on location, from the first paper prototypes right up to large groups of test subjects just prior to the opening. We're really pleased with the success of the Wonderkammers. The best part is seeing the kids wanting to visit the artworks in real life after having played with them in the game. They go upstairs to the rest of the Gemeente Museum, point to paintings on the wall and say, "Look, Mum, that's the one I hung in my mini-museum."
So I also had a go at the Wonderkammers, and I must say I had lots of fun, starting from the introduction by the director, who very soon turned himself into a cartoon, which I thought was amazing. And I cannot imagine many museum directors agreeing to turning themselves into cartoons. I did all the, not all the rooms, but most of them, and to understand also the complex system, the complex system which manages the whole thing. Sending you from one room to the other, showing you or telling you when one room is reserved, someone is already doing something there, and so on. Drawing or painting with Mondrian and playing the room. And I also did my own, as you can see, put up my own very minimal art exhibition in one of the rooms of the Museum. This museum was, in fact, the Wunderkammers were starting in 2005, the first version for teenagers. Then later it was developed into a game for families, and this year they're also going to redo it to address also small children, following the visitors' request. So there's a lot of research on visitors, there's a lot of evaluation. In this case, as in most of the other cases, there was also a lot of prototyping or testing before launching them. So we come quickly to the conclusions. Of course, the recurrent themes, the leading threads, as you have seen, are the use of real objects, the importance of authentic objects or replicas inspired by the collections, the learning, which is always learning by doing, experiential learning inspired by constructivist theories, according to which the learning is not a passive being, but someone who contributes also with the learning itself. A differentiation of learning outcomes and of offers, as we have seen from NEMO's taxonomy. The connection of the programs to formal education, to the curricula, in fact, history, art, technology, sometimes also something additional to the curricula themselves. Creativity, interactivity, and very often this combination of physical, digital, computer-based, and so on. The experience is a key word, definitely. Game-based learning, where technology is not an end in itself, but a tool. And as we have seen, as you have seen from some of these videos, immersive, theatrical, and multisensory solutions, but always well researched. So the content is there, the real learning is there. There is the wow effect, but there's also sound research, and these spectacular effects are based on solid ground. Participatory, collaborative approach with the end users, so not only through advisory boards made up of the children, but also a lot of testing and prototyping. And this connection between past, present, and future, as we have seen some of the museums address issues, contemporary issues, or even issues of the future, like in the case of the offshore experience. And also collaboration with schools and with industries. I'm going back to this research, which, as I mentioned, was done between 2009 and 2011 by the Netherlands Association, because this is, for me, an example of how work is done in the Netherlands, or some of the work that I was able to witness. It all started from a request from the Ministry of Culture and Education to the association to find out whether free transport and free admission to museums would make them more attractive to children. So that was the assumption, free transport, free admission. Following from that assumption, they started out 7 pilot projects to test these ideas. And it turned out that the free admission and free transport don't mean anything. What is important are these other elements, which I'm listing here, and especially the attractivity of museums. And out of the 7 pilot projects, 2 remained and are now running. One is a platform which shows all the offers, educational offers for children in museums. And one is a scheme which is called Museum Inspectors, Children Museum Inspectors, by which children visit museums, they give them points, they score them, and every year the museum which receives the highest score and is the most visited becomes the children Museum of the Year in the Netherlands. And likewise, the child or the young person who has voted most visits, who has done the most visits, becomes the child inspector of the year. So it's a nice scheme which brings together a lot of activities around visits. Why did I mention this? Because to me, this idea of having an idea or an hypothesis, of testing it, putting it to the test, maybe to prove it wrong, and to try and in the end to implement a different solution is something which I saw on different occasions, which is to me also an element of the NL factor, the possibility or the inclination to try and test things. So it's a very pragmatic approach. It probably does not have to do with all these other mentioned. The NL factor, just to put it very short words, is a combination of different elements. I'm not going to tell you what it is about at length, because this is the content also of the publication, which will be available at the end of or late spring this year. But because it is rather boring stuff, it has to do with policies, it has to do with governance models, and so on. Of course, it has to do with the good quality, which I have tried to describe to you this afternoon. It has to do with the professional community, with a very strong association which represents the museum, which advocates for them, and which also offers a platform for museum professionals to exchange views and experiences. But there are other elements which are not so easy to explain. This pragmatic approach to try and test things before implementing them is difficult, but in order to do that, you also have to be flexible, dynamic, and this brings us back to the governance models, where museums in the Netherlands, starting in 1980, at the end of the 1980s already, were little by little all turned into foundations. If you are a foundation, you are not a hierarchical, static organization, you have more freedom to decide. Also freedom to try and test and to fail, which is, however, also a different way of learning. So this just to give you a short preview of what my research, when I put it on paper, will be about, in addition to this gathering. And to me, there's also a further element, which I was not able to name other than Dutch touch. And for me, it is a playful approach, an unassuming attitude, something that encourages you to visit museums, because they're fun, because you're not intimidated. And here I'm showing you something that most of you, I'm sure, will have seen already, and which is the video of before the opening of the when the Rijksmuseum reopened in 2013, they shot this video. It is, of course, spectacular, big museum, lots of money, but I've seen this kind of playful and fun approach on a smaller scale in other museums and on other projects. I'm really closing now, but I would like to stay in touch. And how can we stay in touch? We can stay in touch through NEMO. As you know, NEMO has a working group which is called the Learning Museum, which is focused on education. And so if your organization is a member of NEMO, you can register to be part of that working group. If you're not, your organization is not a member, you have a month and a half to convince your director to become a member of NEMO, because the membership campaign for 2018 starts in April. So you would qualify to be a member if you join before the end of April. We can also meet, hopefully, at the next Children Museums Award ceremony, which will be held in November in Malta, in conjunction, in connection, in the framework of the NEMO annual conference. And you can be there as part of the audience, maybe also as a candidate, or maybe also as a winner, because you have a month to be able to submit your application for the Children in Museums Award, and you find all the details on the websites of the two promoters of the award, the Museum Academy and Hands On. I'm finished. We're not doing so bad as far as time, and so I would be very happy to answer any question that you want to send through via the chat line. Thank you. And thank you also to my two companions in this room, Paolo Mazzatti and Andrea Ferracani, for having managed a not so easy today session of the webinar. I get comments also in Dutch. Yes, they suggest me to tell you to possibly send questions also later on through the email, my email or Nemo's email. They will forward them the questions to you. If you like, you can. I write on the chat my email. What do you think is the best museum for children in Germany? Oh, well, that will be the subject of my next study tour next summer, because I haven't acquired enough information about Germany and German museums. So this is an inspiration for me to do the same thing I did in the Netherlands in 2017 this year. No, I honestly don't know. The paper will be published by NEMO, so for sure there will be a digital publication, and hopefully the publication is not there yet. It's coming. Most of the material is ready, but as you know, it takes a long time also for the design, editing, checking, and so on. And it will be available through NEMO, I would say, before the summer. And hopefully, maybe it will also be printed. We will see. Thank you for putting down my email, Paolo. So I think we can close. I wish you all a very good afternoon, and thanks for being with us and bearing with the technical problems. Thank you. Bye-bye.